Welcome back to Project Chana Power Hour. Each week, we get together to learn and strengthen ourselves in our special mitzvahs of Kashrus, Shabbos, and Taras HaMishpacha, as well as other halachos that are pertinent to women. Our goal is to prepare ourselves and our homes to welcome Mashiach. Tonight's learning is dedicated Le'ulei Nishmas Harav Yitzchak ben Harav Eliezer Tzvi Zev Alav Hashalom. May his neshama have an aliyah. If you would like to dedicate a class in honor or zechus of someone, please reach out via our email, projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com. Please join us afterwards for tzedakah tehillim and a Mashiach thought. Okay, we'll get right into it. For our first class on Hilchos Shabbos, we will be continuing part 3 on the series of Shabbos Davening and explore the meaning, halachos, and Minhagim behind it with Rabbi Braun. Rabbi Braun is the Morozow of Crown Heights. Thank you so much for making time to be on our program.
Okay, I'm using a different computer. I hope everybody could hear me because it's not the standard computer, not the one that I don't know how this thing works over here. I hope it's clear. Can I get an indication that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Excellent. Okay, so we're moving on in the middle of our Seder of Kabbalah Shabbos. We spoke a lot about this last week and the week before. We spoke about the introduction to the Chadodi, and we're up to the paragraph of Ana B'Choyach, which Ana B'Choyach is something which is not said only Friday night in Kabbalah Shabbos. We say it many times. Ana B'Choyach is a very special tefillah. It's important to understand the background of this tefillah. According to Kabbalah, whenever there is an aliyah, an ascent going up in the Olamis, we're going up from one world to another. When we're changing situations and locations, we say Ana B'Choyach. At the end of the day, when our neshama goes up above, Krishma Shalamita, we say the prayer of Ana B'Choyach. Kabbalah Shabbos, when the whole week is ascending upwards, the Olamis are going higher and higher, the level of Malchus is being elevated, we say the prayer of Ana B'Choyach. Ana B'Choyach has in it 6 stanzas. Ana B'Choyach is 1, Kalbarin is the next one, 6 lines, representing the spheres of Chesed until Malchus. Sorry, rephrase that. There's 7 lines representing the spheres from Chesed till Malchus. Each one of them has 6 words. So there's Chesed within Chesed and Gvura within Chesed. The first line is Chesed. So it's Chesed within Chesed and Gvura within Chesed and Tiferes within Chesed. The 7th word doesn't exist. The 7th word is hinted in the Rosh Hashanah, but it's not actually there. We have in Kabbalah, we have sometimes this uniqueness of the number 42 and sometimes the number 49. 49 is when it's 7 times 7, 42 when it's only 7 times 6 or 6 times 7. So when it's 42, we call it Shem Mem Beis. Shem Mem Beis is one of the holiest names of Hashem. The Gemara talks about the uniqueness of Shem Mem Beis. They wouldn't teach this name to their students. It's a very holy name. And this Ana B'Choyach is a prayer associated with that name of Hashem. In fact, the Rosh Hashanah of Ana B'Choyach, you'll notice in the Siddur, there's Rosh Hashanah in small letters printed next to the Ana B'Choyach. Some Siddurim don't have it. Some of the older prints didn't have it. The later prints, they fixed it. Next to each line of Ana B'Choyach is supposed to be an abbreviation, the acrostic of that line. And those letters, all together, those 42 letters, all represent the Shem, special name of Hashem, Shem Mem Beis. You'll notice that on one of the lines, most of the Rosh Hashanah are words that we don't understand. But on the second line, it makes up the word Kras, something Hashem should annul and rip apart to something the prosecutor, because that's part of the power of the special name of Hashem, Shem Mem Beis, that it can annul all the terrible decrees. This Shem Mem Beis is associated also with the Mem Beis Masoyos, the 42 stations that Yidden went from Mitzrayim to come to Eretz Yisrael. Every time they went to another station, they went in a higher place, a higher level, going higher and higher on the way up to Eretz Yisrael. Every aliyah is associated with Shem Mem Beis, with the idea of Ana B'Choyach. In davening, also in Shema, from V'hafta to B'Sharech, there's 42 words. V'hoyev Shemaya is associated with the name of Hashem, which is 72, and that's why there's a numerical value of 72 over there, connected with Midas HaGvura, and Midas HaChesed. V'hafta to B'Sharech is associated with Midas HaGvura, that's why it has the word B'chol Ma'idech on it. And during the prayer of Shema, during the first parsha of Shema, we have those 42 words associated with Shem Mem Beis. So as we mentioned earlier, whenever there's an aliyah, we say it, Krishma Shalamita and Shema goes up. Every morning in Shachas, when we finish Karbanas and Ketores, we're elevating the Karbanas to Hashem, we're elevating our Tefillah, and that we say the Shem Mem Beis there, both during Shachas and during Mincha. Kabbalah Shabbos, because we're leaving the atmosphere of the weekday and we're going to get the Kedusha of Shabbos. It's a time when all the worlds are going up. After Sfiras HaOmer, part of the prayer of Sfiras HaOmer includes a special prayer of Ana B'Chayach because we're going up for all our limitations and boundaries. Beruchnis, we're going to receive the Torah. Before Tkiyas on Rosh Hashanah, this is an interesting one because we don't say Ana B'Chayach before Tkiyas, but if somebody will learn the Ma'amar Chassidus and the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe Siddur, it actually says there in the middle of the Maimer that before Tkiyas Shofar we say Ana B'Chayach. So the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote a letter about this, and it's printed in the Hayom Yom, and we'll come across it in a couple of days. In the Hayom Yom, it says that this, what it says in the Siddur that we say Ana B'Chayach before Tkiyas Shofar, it means the kavanas associated with the psukim, which are connected with Shem Mem Beis. We actually don't say the Ana B'Chayach, but the kavanas of Tkiyas Shofar are associated with that. There are those that are very high levels. They could actually they think about the letters and the words of Ana B'Chayach, but we don't say those words. Those who know Kavanas Hariza will learn all the matters and Kavanas Hariza will understand. But when it says in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe, in the Maimer, the rising before Tkiyas Shofar, we say Ana B'Chayach, it means that we have in mind all the Kavanas of Ana B'Chayach. And in the prayer of Mina Lashon, people say when they go to the oil, also connect with the idea of Aliyas Hanashama, elevation of the soul. We also have the prayer of Ana B'Chayach. So this Ana B'Chayach is here set in our L'Chadoidi, in our L'Chudarana prayers, right before L'Chadoidi, as a part of the idea of the Aliyah Sa'ilim as the Aliyah of Shabbos. There's also a simple explanation because the name Shem Mem Beis of Hashem is a name associated with creation, and Shabbos is Zeicher L'Maaseh Bereshis, commemorates creation. So because we're celebrating Shabbos, we say the name of Hashem connected with creation. When we say the Ana B'Chayach, we don't say those acrostics, Ana B'Chayach, Dulus Mechatat Tzura, then that Rosh Hashanah is not meant to say that. We're meant to think about it, imagine it in our mind, but not say it. That's why it's actually printed in the Siddur, so you should think about it. This is also written in the Hayom Yom, that in the Ana B'Chayach we're supposed to think about those letters, but not actually pronounce them. Now, there's an interesting thing also mentioned in Hayom Yom, that the minhag is that Ana B'Chayach of Kabbalah Shabbos we say quietly. It doesn't say there why. It's not clear why should we say Ana B'Chayach quietly. Is it because there's something unique with this name of Hashem? Because of the idea that the special name of Hashem was such a holy name, we don't teach it publicly, we don't talk about it, and therefore we say it quietly. And therefore that should be in every single time we say Ana B'Chayach. Or is it something unique associated with Kabbalah Shabbos? What could be unique with Kabbalah Shabbos? Because it's actually not so simple whether we should be saying Ana B'Chayach in Kabbalah Shabbos. It's actually not found in the Kizveh Harizal. It talks about the 7 times that we have koil in the prayer before Ana B'Chayach in Mizmer LeDavid, and how they're associated with the 7 lines of Ana B'Chayach, but it doesn't say you should say Ana B'Chayach in the primary manuscripts of the Arizal. In other manuscripts, less reliable manuscripts, it does say we should say Ana B'Chayach. Because there's a bit of an issue whether you should say you shouldn't say Ana B'Chayach over here, so often when that happens, when there's a debate and an argument and a discussion, one of the compromises, we do it, but we do it in a subtle manner, we do it quietly. So that could be the reason why we should say it in quietly, because of this question whether they should say Ana B'Chayach or not. Not clear. But the simple reading of Hayom Yom, Ana B'Chayach di Kabbalah Shabbos, Belachash implies no, Ana B'Chayach specifically a Friday night, not any other Ana B'Chayach. Someone wrote this to the Rebbe. There's a manuscript of the Rebbe that was published where the Rebbe wrote that someone asked him this question, and the Rebbe wrote, I did not answer. So the Rebbe didn't actually answer the question, but someone asked this question. It seems like the standard approach would be that it only applies to Kabbalah Shabbos. There's strong evidence that otherwise we shouldn't be saying Ana B'Chayach quietly. In fact, it's written elsewhere that the Baruch Shem in the end of Ana B'Chayach we say quietly, implying that the rest is normally said loud. This prayer is attributed to the Tana Rabbi Nechunim ben Akana, and as mentioned, this is a special prayer that he made to connect with a very special holy name of Shem Mem Beis. I will mention one other thing about the Shem Mem Beis before we move further, that Arizal tells us that the Kaddish, which is also connected, the reason we say Kaddish during davening, every time we ascend from one level of davening to another level of davening, according to Kabbalah, we say Kaddish. There's halachic reasons for Kaddish, because every break in davening is a Kaddish. But according to Kabbalah, it's when we're going up from one olam to another olam. Davening is a ladder. We're going all the way from the lowest level to the highest level. And every time we go up one more rung on the ladder, we say a Kaddish over there. Kaddish is also connected with Aliyah of the Neshama of the Nifter. So Kaddish is connected with Aliyah Sanashama. That Yisrael tells us that Kaddish is connected with Shem Mem Beis in many different ways, with this special name 42. And there are 7 words in Kaddish, consecutive words that all start with the letter Vav. Yisbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yispar, v'yisrema, v'yisnase, v'yishadar, v'yisala, v'yishalol. Every one of those words start with the letter Vav and also have 6 letters in them. Which the 7 words which start with Vav, with 7 times 6, equals 42, the idea of Shem and Beis, similar to Ana B'Chayach, which is 7 lines, each one with 6 words. The same idea of Aliyah Sa'ilamis. The reason why after Ana B'Chayach we say Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Levad, because this is a tefillah associated with the holy name of Hashem, Shem HaMafoidash. And we know the Kohanim, we say this in Yom Kippur davening, whenever the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur would say the Shem HaMafoidash, the holy name of Hashem, cannot be pronounced. Whenever the Kohen Gadol would say that, the Kohanim and the whole entire nation would say Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Levad. So here also after Ana B'Chayach we say the Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Levad. Moving from Ana B'Chayach, which as we mentioned we say quietly, we go into song and dance and we sing the Lecha Doidi. Who came with this beautiful song of Lecha Doidi? So the source of Lecha Doidi is from the brother-in-law and teacher of the Ramak, Ramosha Kardavera, one of them Kabbalim in the time of the Arizal, a bit before the Arizal. He passed away before the Arizal, much older than Arizal, and his name is Rav Shlomo Alkavatz. Alkavatz was a chazan, a poet. I think I've mentioned it earlier in one of the classes on Kabbalah Shabbos that they say that the city of Sfas was a beautiful city because it was surrounded with such great people. The Rav of the city was the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo. The Rebbe of the city was the Rabbi Yitzchak Lurdi, the Holy Arizal. The Gabbai, the Shamish at the time was the Charedim, Rabbi Lazar Eskeri, famous Sefer. The Darshan at the time was Rabbi Moshe Alshach, the Holy Alshach. And the Payet, the Chazan, the poet, was Rav Shlomo Alkavatz, the one who came up with the Lecha Doidi. His name is alluded to in the Rosh Tevis of Lecha Doidi. So you look at the beginning of each paragraph, Shama, V'Zachar, Likra, Shabbos, and so on, has the word Shlomo Halevi, I believe, representing his name. And this song he composed all about greeting and welcoming Shabbos. It's based on Psukim and Shir Hashirim. We know Lecha Doidi also from the Chasna Maimer, that a traditional Maimer said in Chabad at a wedding, before a wedding, is a Maimer Lecha Doidi. The Frierdiker Rebbe said it at the Rebbe's wedding, and he said it in that Maimer. He incorporated teachings of all the Rabbeim. The Rebbe once again, at one occasion, in honor of a couple of weddings that were taking place, the Rebbe said the Maimer Lecha Doidi. So we have a Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe Lecha Doidi, Maimer of the Rebbe Lecha Doidi, and traditionally Chasanim say that Maimer. And one of the things that talks in that Maimer is the idea of Lecha Doidi, Likras Kala, to go greet the Kala. We're going out to greet the Kala. In fact, it's such a custom that we go greet the Kala before she comes to the chuppah. Really, the whole idea of Kabbalah Shabbos is all about elevation, and we're going up to Hashem. Lecha Doidi Likras Kala means Hashem is coming towards us, which is the opposite direction. And the famous mashal brought in Chassidus is that the father wants to pick up the child, so he has to bend down, lower his hands under the child, and pick up the child. So in order to have our aliyah, we need to have an hamshacha from above. That's the Lecha Doidi Likras Kala. The Minhagim is to say Lecha Doidi standing. In fact, someone prepared once a list of Chabad customs. The Rebbe checked it through, and he wrote it that we say Lecha Doidi standing, clearly. Although some have the custom, we only stand up towards the end, the very last phrase, the last few phrases. We asked the whole entire Lecha Doidi said standing. The traditional custom of Chabad was never to sing Lecha Doidi. Lecha Doidi was said without a song, just said, recited. The Chazan said it, and then the Kahal. In the later years, by the Rebbe, Chazanim started singing Lecha Doidi, and slowly it got received the Rebbe's encouragement. The Rebbe encouraged it, and then it became widespread, the idea of singing Lecha Doidi, to the extent that some people don't even know that it used to be said without a song. Until today, in some Chabad yeshivas, it's still customarily, not so much in Balabatim Minyanim, but in yeshivas at Bachram, when they daven the traditional, original way of saying Lecha Doidi without a song. And then Chazan, and then the Kol. The Rebbe would say without a song, whenever the Rebbe davened for the Amud. If one of the days when the Rebbe davened for the Amud, Yartzeit, Chaf Av of Tisha was on Shabbos, the Rebbe davened, and we would clearly hear the Rebbe's beautiful, sweet, holy voice saying Lecha Doidi, Lecha Doidi Likras Kala Pnei Shabbos Nikabla Shama V'Zacher B'Dibur Echad Hishmiyanu Kelam Yuchad Ravzun Hashem Echad Shmei Echad L'Shevel Seferes V'Lis Hila. That was the way Lecha Doidi was always said. People say, I have never seen this, I have a hard time believing this is true. I probably would have heard about it and noticed it when I was there, but I don't know everything. But when it came to the phrase hisoirity, which is to wake up, they would notice that the Rebbe, before there was a bit, seemed externally drowsy and sort of lifted himself up. And the argument, the theory about maybe it happened a few times, maybe it happened always, I don't know, I've never noticed it. There is such a thing about going to sleep before welcoming Shabbos. It's a time when all the Olamas fall asleep. They have a Dormita almost, that's what it says about Rosh Hashanah. Before Tkiyah Shofar, all the worlds are in a sleep state, in a slumber, and now Tkiyah Shofar wakens them up. And this happens at the end of the year. It happens on a lower level at the end of every single week. So the Alter Rebbe would fall asleep on Friday afternoon, Friday night. They say the difference between Alter Rebbe, it is written, the difference between Alter Rebbe and Hillel Parashat. Alter Rebbe would fall asleep, but Hillel Parashat would go to sleep because he wasn't on that level. So people say that the Rebbe, before his Eire, they would notice the Rebbe, his Eire, wake yourself up. And what I did see, I kind of come to that Mincha Erev Shabbos, very often it seemed like the Rebbe was eyes closed during Chazar Sashat. Seems like the Rebbe was almost sleeping while he was answering Baruch Hu Shmai Amen and turning the pages. Anyhow, having said that, let's move on. We say the entire L'Chadaydi, the entire thing, every single Shabbos, Yom Tov, if Yom Tov falls on Shabbos, makes no difference. The Kviyas, if it's Shabbos, Friday night, we'll be saying L'Chadaydi, although some people have customs that when it's Friday night, they cut out parts. Like we mentioned last week, we cut out everything until Mizmil David. Some people cut out parts of L'Chadaydi. The beginning, the end, whatever it is, we say the entire L'Chadaydi. We'll talk about the one change that we do if it's Yom Tov. When it comes to the very last phrase, which is all about going and welcoming the Shabbos, we turn, the whole entire song is about welcoming the Shabbos, and we actually say, come, Shabbos, come here. We turn to the west, to the Ma'ariv side of the shul, when we say, B'ay v'shalom. In that Kisva Arizal, it says, B'chlal about Kabbalah Shabbos, the Kabbalah Shabbos should be said when you're facing the west. One of the reasons some people explain, Shechina b'Ma'ariv, the Shechina, the divine presence, is found in the west. And therefore, the Arizal, when you told the Talmid of the Arizal will go to the field, it would be facing the west, and they would say the Kabbalah Shabbos in that way, whatever Nuskha of Kabbalah Shabbos they used. Our custom, the remnants of that custom is that we turn around to B'ay v'shalom. I think I mentioned this last week as well, that part of the B'ay v'shalom also represents the idea of going out to the field, because when we're saying the B'ay v'shalom, we're turning to the back of the shul, sort of representing the idea of going outwards. We turn around for B'ay v'shalom. In Sefer Minhagim, it says that the way we turn for B'ay v'shalom is we turn counterclockwise, so you turn to the left. It's interesting because there's a big debate. There's a halacha that you're supposed to always turn. When you turn, you're supposed to be turning derech yamin, the way of the right. But what does that mean, the way of the right? Do you turn to your left and therefore you will go to the right? Or you turn to your right? Do you turn clockwise or counterclockwise? And there's from the Alter Rebbe one way, and from the Tzaddik Tzaddik another way, and there's different opinions about different things. There's how we light our menorah candles, how we open the Aron Kodesh, how the Kohanim turn around. There's so many things about that, but we're focusing on the Chadaydi. I will say it is very well known. I heard this from my father many times, from many other people, that the Rebbe used to do it one way, and then eventually changed, and people told the Rebbe that this was not the Minhagim, only for the Rebbe changed. The Rebbe, and that's what it says today in Sefer HaMinhagim, that we turn for the Chadaydi towards our left, counterclockwise, and that's called Derech Yamin, that's called going to the right. The change that we make between Yom Tov and any other day is in the phrases in the last section of L'Chadaydi. So we say Gam Berino V'Tzahala. When it comes Yom Tov or Chol Hamoed, which is a day of Simcha, we say Gam B'Simcha V'Tzahala. That means not that we say Gam Berino and B'Simcha. Some people do that, but that's not the Chabad custom. And very strong sources to prove this, that we actually replace the word Rino with the word B'Simcha, because the day of Simcha we say Gam B'Simcha U'Tzahala. And the Rebbe gave us particular instructions when Yibis Tammuz was on Shabbos. The Rebbe told them they should say Gam B'Simcha, and it's accepted that the same thing applies to Yudis Kislev. It falls on Shabbos, that we say Gam B'Simcha, the same as Yom Tov. The question is, if Yom Tov was on Friday and now it's already Friday night, we're in a bit of an interesting pickle bind over here, because we're saying the prayer of accepting Shabbos, but we often say it when it's already Shabbos. So if it's already Shabbos, I mean it's over Yom Tov. We don't have that over here in Chutz La'aretz except for Shabbos Bereishis, the day after Simchas Torah. If Simchas Torah is on a Friday, so it's already Matzah Simchas Torah, and we're saying our L'Chadaydi. Do we still say Gam B'Simcha or not? A bit of a debate about that. I've written about this in the regular Luach. Many other Chabad Rabbanim had agreed with that. And it's, again, strong sources to prove that we act as though it's still Friday. The same way that we started Mizmor LeDavid, even though it was already nighttime, because it's considered Erev Shabbos, which is Yom Tov. And the same, many other things like that, we're acting as though it's still day, and we didn't accept Shabbos yet, and therefore we will say the words Gam B'Simcha. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which fall on Shabbos, we don't say B'Simcha, these are not days of Simcha, and then we say Gam Berina. How can we say Berina on such days? Because it is a time of Rina. The Pasuk says, V'gilu berada, you should rejoice while trembling. So we have the concept of happiness on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but it's a covered happiness. And since it's a covered happiness, we use the term Berina, but we can't say the word B'Simcha. Yom Tov that falls on a Shabbos, Chol Hamoed that falls on a Shabbos, or like we said before, even Matzah Yom Tov, then we say the word B'simcha. The very end of Lecha Doidi, we say Boi Chala, Boi Chala, Boi Chala Shabbos Malksa. So with the way we're going to greet the Shabbos, we turn to the right and we say Boi Chala, turn to the left and we say Boi Chala, and we turn around and we say the words Boi Chala Shabbos Malksa. And the last time we say it quietly. So when it's a chazan leading the crowd, so the chazan says Boi Chala, you won't hear him saying the very last phrase Boi Chala Shabbos Malksa. So quietly, contrary to the misconception, is not only the words Bayichala, the whole phrase Bayichala, Shabbos Malksa, Shabbos the queen, Shabbos the bride, come, that last time is said quietly. Why is it said quietly? Because the Gemara only mentions about saying twice Bayichala greeting the Shabbos, Bayichala, Bayichala. The Gemara does not mention about saying a third time. That Rizal adds we should say it a third time. What's the idea of the third time? That Rizal says it represents Chachma, Bina, and Das. The third time representing Das is the one that's said quietly, because according to the Kabbalah, Das is not really part of the 10 Sfiris in the traditional sense of the word. If you count, depends how you count the 10 Sfiris. You count Keser, Chachma, Bina, then you don't count Das. Because Das is not really part of the 10 Sfiris, therefore it's said quietly. When we say, I'm just going to wrap up, when we say the words Ba'ichala, we are receiving our neshama of Shabbos. We receive a neshama Yisrael, an extra neshama of Shabbos, and there's different stages of receiving that neshama. There's the nefesh, there's the ruach, and the neshama. The nefesh of Shabbos we receive when we're saying Ba'ichala. The ruach of Shabbos, of that extra neshama, we see when we're saying Baruch Hu Friday night, and when we come to the words of Frois Aleinu Sukkah Shlomecha right before Shemoneh Esrei, that's when we receive the neshama of Shabbos. So this is a fundamental stage in accepting and welcoming the Shabbos. To be continued with Hashem next week. Gute Nacht.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Braun. And for our next class, we are excited to continue with part 5 on our series of Tznius and boundaries in the workplace with Mrs. Sara Morozow. Even if you're not in a situation where you're working with men, we believe this series will be relevant to other situations too. We'll explore a sensitivity that we can all learn from to create and foster healthy and wholesome environments in the spaces around us. We also want to give credit where credit is due. A lot of research went into the halachos that are presented in this series, and we want to thank Rabbi Braun, Rabbi Rottenberg, and Project De'ehu for all the input that has been provided. We also want to remind our listeners that if you sent in questions, Be'ezras Hashem, they will be addressed in our class next week. We encourage everyone to send in their questions to Project Chana powerhour@gmail.com. Chana is spelled without an H. Okay, so let's now get into it. We are so grateful to have Mrs. Sara Morozow on our program again. Mrs. Morozow is a well-known color teacher and mashpia to many. Thank you so much for being on our program tonight.
Thank you very much. Just to recap, we had a few segments about the hashkafa behind women in the workplace in a mixed setting. We began our first segment of the halacha. We went through the 3 mitzvahs and Shulchan Aruch, and then we got into some practical examples. Today we will continue with the halachas, and then we'll move on to questions and answers and more hashkafa and practical tips. You could still email to projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com if you have any questions before we do our final segment next week, Be'ezras Hashem, or if you have any tips or something that you want to share with everybody. projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com. Chana is without the H. So today we will talk about gifts. It is forbidden for a man to give a gift to an unrelated woman or vice versa, as it leads towards a personal closeness and goes into the category of greeting, which is prohibited. In Hilchos Purim, there are more rules that a man should send mishloach manos to a man and a woman should send to a woman. One should not send mishloach manos to a member of the opposite gender. Several poskim explain that the main reason for this halacha is that giving someone a gift is a form of greeting, since it shows personal interest from the donor to the recipient and leads towards a personal relationship. Greeting an unrelated member of the opposite gender is prohibited. To note that the Rebbe once remarked that when the Bachrim do Mitzvah Purim and distribute Shalach Manos to women, they should state that it is on behalf of Neshei Chabad. Now, this principle of gifting relates to 2 things: a personal gift or Any gift if it's given in a personal manner. Again, either it's a personal gift or any gift if it's given in a personal manner. So here are some practical applications. Giving a salary bonus that a boss, don't we all hope for that to happen? Well, anyways, what are the halachos about giving a gift of a bonus of a salary? A male business owner or employer is permitted to give a bonus to his female employees or vice versa when it is a customary time to do so. For example, at a time when the company customarily gives bonuses, when it was previously arranged with the employee to receive a bonus, before Yom Tov, when a major project is completed, and so on and so on. Since this type of bonus is considered part of the employee's salary and not a personal gift. Although it is permissible to give a bonus in the above-mentioned circumstances, it is prohibited if the bonus shows a special interest in an employee of an opposite gender. Now, when gifting is the norm, now we're talking about gifts. When one gives employees a gift for a special occasion, such as Hanukkah or Purim, all employees must receive an identical gift so as to avoid the gift becoming personal. If there's a specific reason why one employee cannot receive the same gift as her colleague, for example, due to an allergy, and not because the boss wants to express special interest in his employee, it is permitted to give her a different gift in an appropriate manner. One should not gift an item of personal nature, such as a piece of jewelry, a watch. Only more general gifts should be given, and one should not write any notes of a personal or friendly nature to be included with the gift that is given. There's a suggestion by the poskim that it's preferable to give a gift that is meant to be appreciated or used by a group of people, such as a fruit platter, a chocolate platter, rather than a gift that only an individual can enjoy. Since the platter will be enjoyed by the entire staff, it is less personal. Getting lunch for a coworker. A man should not volunteer to get lunch for an unrelated woman or vice versa, even if he or she does not pay for the food. The mere act of getting lunch for the other one shows a personal closeness and may fall into the category of gift giving. However, if there is an employee at an office who is officially designated as the one who gets lunch for the other employees, this is permitted. A business owner or manager may buy lunch for their entire staff, as this is considered to be part of their salary. To note, chas and kala gifting each other has more serious shilas. The Rebbe said that the chosin should not gift the kala with an engagement ring. High-value gifts should be given to the kala by the chosin's parents, or they should be given from the family. Even small gifts should not be personal in nature, and preferably should not be given in person from the chosin to the kala. Now the reverse, a kala may give her chosin a gift if both the style gift and the presentation of the gift are modest without any affectionate or romantic undertones. Some examples of appropriate gifts are sfarim, tashmishe kedusha, and non-personal useful items. We live in an era where the culture of company loyalty and appreciation of coworkers and team effort is expected. Many companies have holiday parties or Rosh Chodesh luncheons, as well as other company events with the intention of creating a feeling of togetherness. Company meetings and company parties create extra challenges. Please take notes of A, the type of atmosphere, B, the seating arrangements, and C, the interactive games or activity that will be done as a group. And then reach out to your mashpia or rov for personal guidance. Now we'll move on to conversations. Conversations that are considered etiquette or professional would be okay. Personal conversations are not okay. And let us elaborate, okay? What is the prohibition against greeting? The Shulchan Aruch states one may not inquire about the well-being of a woman at all. A man is prohibited from greeting a woman, as well as from inquiring about her well-being or private matters. A woman is likewise prohibited from greeting a man or inquiring about his well-being or personal matters. The underlying principle of prohibition is that it applies when the greeting is in a personal or friendly manner, as opposed to a professional manner. The prohibition against greeting applies not only when speaking directly to the person, but even when the greeting is passed on through a third party. For example, asking a friend to greet someone, or sending regards to someone, or inquiring about their well-being on the sender's behalf. The reason for this is that when the recipient of the greeting knows that someone sent them a greeting or inquired about them, it arouses feelings of closeness within the recipient, even if they didn't hear the greeting from the sender directly. These prohibitions apply to written communication as well, like texting, emailing, etc., between non-related men and women. Now we're going to move on to some practical applications. The following are common practical examples of greetings where it is apparent that the greeting is a symbol and indication of closeness. One who walks down the street and observes someone greeting someone else with a verbal greeting will typically think that these two people are close, or at least know each other well. Two strangers generally do not greet each other when they randomly meet. At most, they would greet each other with a slight nod as a polite formality. It is important to note that the halachos related to greeting are not necessarily the same in all circumstances. What may be permitted for one person may be forbidden for someone else. For instance, an employer and coworker may both make the same inquiry, yet it can be acceptable for one but not the other due to their different roles or different personalities. The halacha can also vary depending on the dynamics of the relationship that the questioner has with the one they are asking. Therefore, one must always be vigilant that any greetings or inquiries should be done in a permissible manner, and never in a manner that leads to casualness or closeness. One is permitted to ask a member of the opposite gender about their well-being or personal matters when there's specific reason to do so, and only as much as necessary. For example, if the employee will miss work due to a simcha, vacation, a health issue, he may be asked by their employer about the personal matter to the degree necessary for work. How long will you be on vacation? In order to plan for the employee's absence from work. Are you feeling better? Are you able to work? Again, to the degree necessary to make plans at the workplace. One may inquire of a member of the opposite gender about the personal circumstances or skills to the degree necessary for a specific reason. For example, one may ask relevant questions during a job interview in order to determine whether the applicant is the right person for the job. Now, asking a spouse. Although inquiring about a member of the opposite gender via a third party is generally prohibited, one may ask their own spouse about the well-being of an unrelated man or woman. A man may ask his friend about his friend's wife, how she is doing, when it is a form of midas derech eretz, basic decency. For example, one who knows that the wife of his coworker is Rachmana litzlan not well may ask his coworker in a refined manner, how is she feeling? Again, it's midas derech eretz and it's basic decency. A salesperson. In business, often the reason one will inquire about another's well-being is not due to genuine interest, but rather to forge or maintain positive business relationships. A prime example of this is a salesperson or HR or client relations representative at the workplace. In these circumstances, where the two parties are of opposite genders, a competent Rav must be consulted to determine what is and is not permitted to be said. Now we're going to talk about giving a bracha, like for example, Mazel Tov. It is permitted to wish a member of the opposite gender Mazel Tov, a gut gebencht Jahr, a Chag, a Pesach, Kosher v'Sameach. These do not fall into the category of greeting, rather they are considered a bracha, which is permitted. Or saying a tefillah, like Refuah Shalema. It is permitted to tell a member of the opposite gender Refuah Shalema, or your meeting should go well. All these are forms of tefillah and not considered greetings. Nichem Avelim. Nichem Avelim, reciting Hamakim Menachem, is permitted even if the Menachem and the Avel are of opposite genders. Still, one should do so while standing at a distance, such as at the doorway of the room. Here is a practical review concerning conversations that can lead to closeness. Here are some questions you can ask yourself and then reflect or speak to your mashpia. Here are some questions. A, is this a work-related professional conversation, or is this becoming a pleasurable conversation? B, is this a business-related useful friendship, or is this becoming a good feeling friendship? C, when somebody asks, how was your vacation? You could answer, Baruch Hashem, it was nice. And that will be appropriate versus going into all the details. If it was hectic, there was a flight cancellation, what you enjoyed, that would be considered inappropriate between men and women. Or where did you spend Shabbos last week? You could say, I was in the Catskills, I was in upstate. But then you don't continue to go into the details about all the traffic on the way there and what happened on the way back. Just you could, for simple etiquette, you could share a basic answer and then move on. D, it is not advisable to engage in the following conversations as they generally are more personal in nature and lead to inappropriate closeness. Shalom bayis conversations, chinuch problems, advice on relationship questions, even food preferences or politics, or similar personal questions are inappropriate. It's not advisable to communicate after work hours at home because you're not in the professional setting anymore. And boundaries have to be put down depending on your situation. If you have to answer calls or be involved in office work after hours, boundaries must be put into place. Extra boundaries should be put into place for late night bedtime, after bedtime conversations. Please be mindful of the different time zones as well. It's not advisable to have conversations in the hallways, out of the office, where you're waiting for the elevators, because they tend to be personal in nature and not work-related. Please be mindful that eye contact and body language speak volumes. Friendly personalities require extra precautions. Let's talk about compliments. Please be aware that only job-related professional compliments are okay. The job is well done, and it cannot become personal in nature. Wow, you got a new haircut. You have a nice coat. That's personal. In general, it is best to compliment the action, not the person. You submitted your forms very detail-oriented and they were complete, and that shows high professionalism in your work versus, wow, you're such an organized person, your mind and the way you think out about things so clearly, you're going to go great places in life. See, the same compliment could be professional or the same compliment can become personal. It's strongly advisable not to use first names. In some languages, there are different words to use for you. Like in Yiddish, we say du, or ihr. Ir is more formal. Besides the plural form, it's more to a formal person. In French, we have tu, which is more the everyday, versus vous, which is not only plural, but it shows derech eretz. It's more to a formal person. This is a smart way to create a respectful distance. We have to practice extra caution when using sarcasm or jokes because it does generate inappropriate feelings. Now, here's something else it's important to be careful with. Phone, chats on the phone. Like we mentioned earlier about the halacha of greeting, even if it's not face-to-face, the prohibition still applies. So on phone chats, just like yichud, you cannot have personal chatting, personal texting, personal posting, and emailing between male and female. All communication must be businesslike. If it is necessary for the team of males and females to be on the same group chats, extra precautions should be put in place to maintain proper boundaries. For example, no use of slang, no use of emojis, no use of first names, only strict business matters, no voice notes. These are all ideas, and you should ask yourself, would I feel comfortable if somebody that I respect, my mashpia, my husband, or someone I respect, reads the comments that are posted on this group chat? Phone calls are less intimate than text at times, but still be aware, would I be okay if others overheard this conversation? I want to add another point that some people are careful with, not to use we to include a male plus a female in the same conversation if it would bring to closeness. For example, if you had a conversation with your boss, instead of saying we decided that moving forward XYZ, it is best to say the boss and I had a meeting about it and it was decided. That means keep the man and the woman separate in the conversation instead of saying we. I do want to point out something else about conversations. We know what it says in Torah about Shlomis Bas Divri, that she began just with innocent, friendly greetings to her neighbors. Shlomis is Shalom Aleichem, how are you, how are things? Divri, just basic chit chat, nothing very personal, nothing intimate. But what began just friendly, neighborly chit chats evolved into a grave Avera. And of course, the Rebbe explains how we learn it's her limud that because she was the only one that behaved this way, we learn about the Tznius, all the other hundreds of thousands of women in that generation, that they maintained the highest standards of Tznius. And that's because she was unusual, she was the exception, we learn about everyone else. At the same time, the Rebbe says that when we learn from her and Neshei Yisrael become extremely careful with its tznius in their speech, this becomes, to her credit, becomes a schus for her. It becomes a schus for her. So we should take this lesson and bring more schusim because we see where it leads to. There are extra boundaries that we should be aware of, that we should put in place when the reality of daily challenges is more difficult in nature. I'm going to list now situations that you should be extra careful with because you're in a more challenging situation. A firm office versus a non-Jewish environment, each has its challenges. If you're among firm people, first of all, one, you're usually more familiar and comfortable with each other because they have more in common to share and to chat about, and it's easier for conversations to become personal. Two, if your workmates have lower standards than you, they may make you question if you're being too frum, and that may require more boundaries. Three, a yid who disregards or is very lax with proper boundaries between men and women is defined as a parutz, and regarding the laws of yichud, and extra precautions are necessary, even if it's a family member. For example, usually two men can be alone by day with one woman, but not if the man is a parutz. A non-Jew uses coarse language or curse words depending on the country and culture. Inappropriate interactions can be more common, and therefore the laws of yichud are more severe. Three, working with family members. Once it's libay gaspa, if you have a brother-in-law, a nephew, an uncle, a cousin that you're working with, and naturally there's a closeness there, but because it's a member of your family, you're more familiar with each other as well. This requires more thoughts and certain types of boundaries that you should discuss with your Rav. D, one who is at a disadvantage because they want to keep the job. Maybe they're younger, maybe they're newer, maybe they're more vulnerable, maybe just because she's a woman. When you're eager to keep your job, sometimes it's harder to uphold boundaries. Another situation, when someone has a need to fit in because they feel uncomfortable with themselves, and that becomes more difficult for them to stick to their values, you would need extra support to be able to uphold boundaries. When somebody's going through a hard time, they're more vulnerable, they want more connection, they have to be more cautious with conversations in the workplace and interactions. As well as if the workplace as a group is going through a hard time, the commonality of a stressful experience breeds closeness and requires extra vigilance. Single women are frustrated with the dating process, is more challenging. When there's an overly friendly, informal, or casual work atmosphere, that's extra challenging. We have to put more thought into it. Working in healthcare poses many, many shaygos in the areas of negia, of touching the opposite gender, and one must consult with their Rav for their specific hadracha. Sometimes we know that a specific boundary is necessary and proper, but emotionally we may resent it, and practically we're frustrated when we implement it. This is a cue that it is time to have an honest conversation with a mentor, a mashpia. Often this happens when there's an underlying emotional or relationship challenge that needs to be resolved. Sometimes very low feelings of self-worth create a need to seek attention from others in an unhealthy way. Sometimes when our own shalom bias is out of order, it is enticing to seek validation from other males who value our talents and personality. Sometimes when we are lonely for so many years, it is immensely painful and takes superhuman effort to keep up boundaries, and especially if those around us actively seek our friendship. Sometimes we were raised in a culture of very little boundaries between men and women, and we find it awkward to change our habits. These are just a few examples of situations where we must seek out extra support from peers, from mentors, mashpia, so that we can uphold boundaries with a happy, healthy attitude, both begashmius and beruchnius. B'neder, next time we will continue with more practical applications and questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Morozow. And for our next class on Kashrus, tonight we will be concluding our series on harmful foods with Rabbi Nissan Zibell, and we will address more questions that came in. Rabbi Zibell is the Kashrus administrator at the RCF, the Rabbinate of Central Florida, and delivers classes to the general public on various Kashrus topics. He is also highly active in answering consumers' Kashrus questions on a daily basis. Thank you very much for being part of our program tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, and a good evening. We are wrapping up the subject of harmful foods. This week is going to be the last class discussing harmful foods. This week's class is Harmful Foods Part 11, and we're going to be focusing on your questions answered, as well as other miscellaneous harmful dangers that come up in regards to food. So last week we covered the details of food that was touched by somebody that did not wash negavasser in the morning and all of the practical ramifications of that. We also discussed food that was left under a bed. We didn't cover all the details, so we're going to continue a bit more, discussing a bit more of the food left under a bed. And as mentioned, we're going to be wrapping up the entire subject of harmful foods and discussing any questions that did come in over all the classes, and any other things that came up which weren't mentioned in the classes. We'll catch up and we'll wrap everything up. So to begin, regarding food that was left under a bed. We mentioned last week very briefly, there are different opinions in regards to food that was left under a bed, regarding if it's allowed to eat such food. The halacha just mentions food that was under a bed is forbidden to be eaten due to a danger, or is dangerous for a person. And the question is if it's forbidden after the fact. And we mentioned various things. If it's only if someone slept on the bed, it's only if it's a floored ground. But that's all these details that we mentioned was only bidi eved after the fact. If food was left under the bed, then we should be aware of these different points to bring up to a rav. But lichatchila, initially, we should never put any food under a bed, and any food that was left under a bed and we're not sure about, a person should avoid until they speak to a rav. Why do we mention all these different exceptions? Is that to realize that at times there could be reasons to allow it, and therefore one shouldn't right away just discard it, but one should reach out to a rav and know what to bring up. So besides what we brought up last week, we said it's only specifically if someone's sleeping on a bed. If someone didn't sleep yet on the bed, it was just under a bed, one should ask a rav in such a case, because there's room to allow it. There's also room to allow it if the floor under the bed is not just the ground, but has flooring. Some use that as leniency to allow the food bidi eved after the fact, and sometimes that's combined with other factors. And more factors that may at times make a difference is Some opinions hold that it's only regarding cooked foods because the wording in the halacha is cooked foods and other foods, but it seems like maybe only cooked foods would be an issue. But if someone had raw foods like raw pasta or raw potatoes, it wouldn't apply. Obviously, we don't hold like that lechatchila initially, but b'di'eved after the fact, if someone by mistake did leave such food under the bed, there may be more room to be lenient. Similarly, there may be more room to be lenient after the fact if somebody else put the food under the bed and you did not do so, because halachically somebody else doing it may be a reason to say that the danger isn't applicable. So that may be another factor to, if your cleaning help placed a box of wine under your bed or something like that happened, somebody else did it, that may be a reason to allow it after the fact, after speaking to a Rav. Another factor which may allow it after the fact, if it's double wrapped or double sealed with two proper wraps, at times that may be a reason to allow it. Like we just mentioned, let's say a case of wine. So the wine is inside of a bottle that's sealed and it's in a case that's sealed. That as well may be a reason to be lenient in some circumstances after the fact, but the evidence if it was done. And other scenarios which one could be lenient after the fact is when it comes to non-food items, like let's say pills, which were left by mistake under the bed. Since it's non-food items, it's not really a food, that would generally be allowed. It's actually interesting. There's a letter of the Rebbe Rashab writing to a Rav asking him if he's allowed to consume tobacco that was left under a bed. So it seems like although tobacco may not be a food item, maybe because it's somehow ingested by inhaling, the Rebbe Rashab was asking about that. And as well, by a bunk bed, it's brought that the bottom bed is technically under the bed that's above it. So it's the place can bring that the chatchila, because of that, one should avoid storing any food or keeping any food on that bottom bunk. However, b'di'eved, after the fact, there's what to rely on because it's not literally on the floor under a bed, it's on the bed under a bed, which may be a bit different. Other places to be lenient is if somebody was on a flight and put their food under their seat and they slept. This was a case that was actually happened to a chassid that was traveling on the train and put his food under his seat and slept. And afterwards he approached the Rebbe Rashab. Rebbe Rashab told him that the issue is specifically a bed that's designated for sleeping. That's when there's an issue. However, a seat that's designated for sitting that happened to be a person fell asleep on it, that's fine. So this would apply as well to, let's say, food that was left under someone's seat and their bed. That would, on the plane and they fell asleep, that would apply then. Or if food was put under a stroller and a kid took a nap, same idea, because the stroller is designated. It's a stroller. It's not specifically a bed that's only for sleeping, and that as well would be permissible to consume. If the chatchila, one should from the onset do it. Obviously, when it comes to some things, it's not practical. Otherwise, if someone has a stroller and they want to put some food under it, practically speaking, or if someone's traveling and that's the only place that they could put their food is under their seat, then that, practically speaking, that's what they have. Then it's fine. Otherwise, if there's another easier option, it would be better to avoid in such a case. Now, to cover some questions that came in on the other topics of harmful foods, and after that, if we still have some more time, we're going to cover other miscellaneous topics within harmful foods, little small topics that were not covered and we'll cover today. So a question that came in was regarding the idea that we mentioned that water that was left overnight in the metal container. We mentioned that there may be room to be lenient on certain aspects of it, based on the letter from the Rebbe. Of course, according to a different understanding, it may be totally fine these days, and no one may not have to keep it. And one should ask the Rav how to go about. But if someone is careful with that, to what extent do they need to be careful? If, let's say, they wash their dishes and they wash the pot, and in the morning they come and they see that the pot still has some droplets of water from the dishwashing. Do they have to now dry that pot before using it, or could they use it the way it is? And seemingly, in such a case, we could apply the concept of bittul, of nullification, and if there's majority of water that was not left overnight, even if one wants to take on the stringency, they would not have to be careful with this water. They wouldn't have to start drying their pot. It would be fine. Another question which came in was, does it help if somebody adds salt or anything or sugar to their water? So as mentioned, when we discussed the danger, this applies to anything that has water in it, even if it's a soup. So even if it's a soup, obviously soup has water in it that remains overnight, there's an issue. So even if plain water has some salt or sugar added to it, that would not save it from this sakana if one is being careful and avoiding such sakana. In regards to, we mentioned snakes, and if the drink was left uncovered for even for a little bit of time, enough time that a snake could come and drink, and we said it doesn't apply anymore these days because we do not have snakes in our homes. A question was asked, what if somebody has a pet snake? Would that make any difference? So first of all, if they have a pet snake that's venomous, we're hoping that they're having it in a safely locked up, that it's not roaming the house, because that itself could be a halachic issue, having something dangerous like that roaming around. And if it's safely locked up, then there's no concern that it got out and drained from the water. It's not a spiritual thing of having snakes around. It's a practical danger that a snake may come and drink from the water. So if the snake is locked up, then it would be fine. And if the snake is not venomous and is roaming the house, however, if that's realistic, it would be an issue because it's only because of the venom of the snake that the snake drank from the water. It's not, again, a spiritual thing of snakes. It's a physical danger of the venom leaching into the water or drink or milk or wine that we discussed that will be drank. A practical point which was brought up by a listener, which may be a practical aspect to keep in mind, is at times, this is regarding the danger of fish and meat. At times people have on their counter a little type of like plate. It's called like a spoon rest or a spatula rest, is when they're mixing something or using a spatula and they want to put it down on the counter, but they don't want to get the counter dirty. There's a little plate that meant to put the spoon or spatula down on there so you don't get your counter dirty. Just get that little plate dirty. And at times you may have fried some schnitzel or whatever, and then you put the spatula down on there or a fork down on there, and it has some oily residue of meat. And then later on, you may be doing something with fish and put down on that same spatula holder, and you may have forgotten to wash it. So that's just something practical to keep in mind. If you do have that around your kitchen, that if you put things down and you're going to be switching, just keep in mind that you should wash it down in between or switch off to a clean one before going and doing something that's fish, or the opposite, or vice versa. That's in regards to what came in. To continue on a few more dangerous or harmful foods that are brought up, is the Alter Rebbe mentions in regards to water that was warm water that's contained in a metal vessel. So you have warm water in a metal vessel. It's brought down. He brings it out there. Brings that if one drinks from such water, it could damage the body. It's harmful for the body. The only way to save this has nothing to do with water overnight in a metal vessel. This is the fact that it's warm or lukewarm water in a vessel. Drinking it out of a metal vessel, drinking it is harmful for the body, unless one adds other things to the beverage, like herbs or spices or roots of scented plants or besamim, something that will change the aroma and flavor of the water. Then it's fine. So technically speaking, if somebody had warm water in a container and they want to drink it plain, it would be a danger. However, if they add tea or coffee, that already would not be an issue and would be fine. the question, the Alter Rebbe actually mentions a point that this only applies to warm or lukewarm water. The moment the water came to a boil, then it doesn't apply anymore. So if the water was boiled and then it cooled down a bit and now it's warm in a metal utensil, you could drink it right out of it without adding anything to it. However, the Alter Rebbe also adds another word. He says boiled or boiling. That means it's boiling as you're drinking, which because of that uncertainty, it's not clear which direction to take. There's a difference if something was boiled and now cooled off or is lukewarm, could you drink it? Or is the Alter Rebbe saying you could only drink it if it's still actively boiling hot? And it's unclear. Practically speaking, poskim rule that if the water was boiled and it's permitted to drink the water in a metal vessel, even if it was originally boiled in a metal vessel and it cooled down now and it's only lukewarm now, it doesn't have to be actually boiling when you drink it. And that's, again, if you want to drink it plain the way it is. This concept of drinking warm water only applies to a metal vessel. Any other vessels that have that water was warmed in them, there's no issue. So if it's earthenware, other vessels that the water was warmed in and is still warm when it wasn't boiled, it's fine. There's a question that comes up. If you transferred that warm water that was in a metal vessel to a non-metal vessel, so you take from something that's warm in a metal vessel to a porcelain cup or to a earthenware cup or to a glass cup, and that original water was not boiled, because again, if the original water was boiled, we mentioned that there's no more issue. So it wasn't boiled, but it's warm, and you transfer it to another cup. Some say that that helps and there's no more danger. Others, however, rule that there's still a danger and it's not acceptable in such a case. And therefore, it should be avoided. But again, if the water was originally boiled, even if it was in the metal, it would be totally fine now, even if it got warmed up, even if it was still in the metal vessel. And if you added something like coffee or tea, as well, it would be fine, even if it's still in the metal vessel, even if it was not boiled. So that's one more concept which comes up in harmful foods and is not as commonly known, but the Alter Rebbe brings it. And to get more clarity, again, the Alter Rebbe discusses this in the halachos of Shmiras Guf Nefesh, and you can look for more details over there. And something else which the Alter Rebbe brings, which is he brings this dangerous, and the lashon that the Alter Rebbe writes is that it's sam hamavis, it's poison. The Alter Rebbe writes that all, and this is in the halachos of Shmiras Guf Nefesh, that all sweat coming from anywhere in the body is poison, except for sweat that comes from the face. Practically speaking, at times, if somebody's working in a very, very hot kitchen and a lot going on, their hands may become sweaty, and that sweat is included in the dangerous sweat. And if they handle something with their hands, that could be harmful for the food and could be dangerous. Or if they're sweating, and they're sweating not just from their face, but sweating from their hair, from the head, and that's dripping down their face, then that's not regular facial sweat. Facial sweat, there's no danger, but sweat coming from the hair would be a danger. It would be, like, again, Alter Rebbe says, samamav, poisonous, and if somehow a person wiped their forehead or they touch it, they would have to just wash their hands very well, besides for hygiene reasons, because of this danger that applies. Another thing which is brought down is that if something was used by mistake for negavasser, for whatever reason, somebody made a mistake and the salad bowl was used, there was nothing else around, they used the salad bowl for negavasser, or for mayim achronim. If somebody was at a table and they took 2 cups, and those were permanent real cups, glass cups, and washed from one cup into the other, the one that received the mayim achronim has a very strong spiritual tumah and should not be used with food again, as well as, or if a bowl was used for negavasser. And if one wants to transfer it back, there could be a whole kashering process that may have to be done, and some say even have to kasher it 3 times. So one should speak to a rav if that does happen, and they want to transfer it back to be used with food, how they should actually go about. There's another interesting sakana that's mentioned, that if a pot wasn't used in 30 days, and you cooked food, that food now is harmful, is dangerous. However, there are some exceptions. If that pot was rinsed, you washed it before using it, that's fine. The food is not harmful. Or if you transfer the food to another pot or even to a plate, it's not harmful anymore. It's only harmful to eat it directly out of that pot. Many don't accept this and say that that doesn't make sense because for Pesach, many people save their kelim for over a whole year and they still use it afterwards. They may sometimes not wash it, but ideally it's best to wash it first. And even if it wasn't washed, it's only if you're eating it directly out of the pot. Otherwise, it's not a concern. And there are a few more dangers which are brought up with we're now running out of time. We'll mention one more thing. Zugas, eating two of something or drinking two of something, so 2 cookies or 2 cups of water, eating things by equal pairs, 2, 4, 6, 8, so on and so forth. That's not an odd number, is brought down in Gemara and later on as well that there is a sakana, but this does not apply anymore these days. There's no concern for that, and one does not have to be concerned with that. And we have to realize that all these dangers, we are told that when it comes to matters of danger, we are even more careful than matters of isur or matters that are forbidden. So if when it comes to things that are forbidden to us, we're so careful, we should be even more careful for things that are harmful, that are dangerous for us. And we have to realize that, like we mention each time, not all these dangers are always spiritual. Some of them are physical. And therefore, if today's doctors tell us or warn us that some foods are harmful for us or dangerous for us, one has to be equally careful as well to avoid such foods and to be careful not to put themselves in danger, as obviously putting yourself in physical danger is absolutely usher and would absolutely apply also to modern day medical dangers or things that doctors tell us are dangerous for us. And with this, we'll wrap up with the class on harmful foods.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Zibell. Before we do our conclusion of Tehillim and a Mashiach thought, we want to reach out to our listeners. If you enjoy these weekly classes, please consider partnering with us and be a part of strengthening hundreds of women with the knowledge of practical halacha. Log on to mikveh.org/donate and contribute any amount. You can select Project Chana Power Hour to ensure your donation goes towards our program. Thank you. Okay, let's put a coin in the pushka, and then we're going to say the Rebbe's Kapitel together, as well as Kapitel Chaf for Eretz Yisrael. Shir Hamalais LeDavid. Lolei Adonai Shahaya Lanu, Yaimar Na Yisrael. Lolei Adonai Shahaya Lanu, Bakum Aleinu Adam. Azai Chayim B'La'onu, B'Charois Apam Banu. Azai Hamayim Shetafunu, Nachala Avar Al Nafshenu. Azai Avar Al Nafshenu, Hamayim Hazeidanim. Baruch Adonai Shaloi Nasanana Teref L'Shinehem. Nafshenu Ketzipa Nimlata Mipach Yaikshim Hapach Nishbar, V'Anachnu Nimlatnu. Ezreinu B'Shem Adonai, Oiseh Shamayim V'Aretz. Let's have in mind the safety of our hostages and all Yidden around the world. Lamnatseach Mizmar LeDavid, Yancha Adonai B'Yom Sara, Yisagevcha Shem Elohei Yaakov. Yishlach Ezracha Mikaidesh U'Mitzion Yisadeka. Yizkar Kol Menchaisecha V'Ilascha Yedashne Sela. Yiten Lachachal Vavecha V'Chal Atzascha Yemale. Neranana B'Shuasecha V'Shem Eloheinu Nidgal. Yemale Adonai Kol Mashalisecha. Ata Yadati, Ki Haishi Adonai Mashiachai, Yanehu Mishmei Kadshai, Bigvoris Yesha Yaminai. Ele Vareche Ve'ele Vasusim, V'anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nazkir. Hei Makaru V'Nafalu, V'anachnu Kamnu V'Nis'aidad, Adonai Haishia HaMelech Yaneinu V'Yom Kareinu. On Aleph Rosh Chodesh Elul Tafshin Nun Aleph, the Rebbe said, efforts should be made to publicize the 5 services connected with the month of Elul: Tefillah, Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, Tshuva, and Geula. In particular, emphasis should be placed on the service of Geula, and this should influence all the other services. i.e., the totality of one's service to Hashem should be infused with a dimension of infinity that comes about from anxious anticipation of the Geula. Quick reminder, if you appreciate these weekly classes, share them with your family and friends. All playbacks are available on mikvah.org/power hour and also on all podcast platforms as well as 24/6. Search us up as Project Chana Power Hour. If you have questions on the classes or would like to dedicate a week of learning in honor or le'ulei nishma someone, please reach out to us on our email, projectchanapowerhour@gmail.com. That's Chana without the H. We look forward to seeing you again next week, and may our learning prepare us and our homes and bring every Jewish home to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach now. Thank you for joining.